Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Well, let's start with intraday market figures. Starting in Africa, investors on the continent displayed more of negative sentiment as intraday. Even Nigeria's all-share index, which ended positive yesterday, was trading in the red, though marginally, while South Africa's JSE lost 0.40%. Egypt's EGX30 was on the flip side at intraday. It gained 0.11%, while Kenya's all-share index shed 0.23% at the close of trade yesterday. In the Middle East, it was all green. Abu Dhabi gained 0.76% and Dubai was up 0.55%. Elsewhere, Saudi Arabia was up marginally and Qatar gained 0.34%. We move to Europe now, where the pan-European stock 600 rose 0.6% in early trade, with travel and leisure stocks adding 1.8% to lead gains as all sectors entered positive territory except basic resources, which fell 0.7%. Global investors still have their eyes on economic data and central banks, but let's find out where German investors are looking at this time with Conrad, who's joining us from Frankfurt. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ini. Thanks for having me back on Channels TV.
Yeah, good to have you back. Well, I can see behind you today you have a lot of yellow. What's going on? Is it a normal trading day? Is it a yellow day at Frankfurt?
Obviously, someone wants to grab our attention, and this being the stock exchange, of course, it's a company that has its IPO today. The name of the company can be seen there. It's Vitesco. This is a spin-off of one of Germany's largest automaker suppliers. It's a spin-off of Continental. And Vitesco is the part of Continental that makes electric drives, electronic control units, stuff like that, but also parts that are used in combustion engines. And that is probably the reason why the valuation of Vitesco came out to be much lower than what optimistic forecasters had made. The valuation turned out to be 2.5 billion euros. The optimistic analysts had said that it would be between 3 and 3.5 billion. So obviously it's difficult to sell a story if you are still invested in old technologies, even if you are able to operate with new technologies as well.
Well, a lot of IPOs going on there in Frankfurt. Very busy time for you guys over there. Well, the first criminal trial about the diesel emissions cheating at Volkswagen has started in Germany, Conrad. The scandal came out in 2015. That's 6 years ago. What took the German court so long to open a trial?
You know, criminal trials have higher standards than civil lawsuits. Prosecutors have to make a great effort to prove that criminal energy was involved in the case. That's why, before this trial started today, 75,000 pages of data have been compiled containing potential evidence about the criminal quality of what was going on at Volkswagen. And you know, this might sound obvious. Of course, there must have been criminal activity involved here. For a long time, this was not so obvious. The legal framework that ruled the way how emissions testing happened here in Germany was not always clear. It was somewhat obscure. It's a bit like, remember the bankers in the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. For a long time, what they did was considered legal. Turned out it was not legal at all.
Yeah, I guess things change every day. What was normal yesterday will not be normal tomorrow. And France is planning to spend north of €500 million to help households cope with high energy prices. Why do we have this price hike? Why is it so high?
Well, a couple of factors. The most important one being that the prices for things that we make electricity of have spiked as well, namely the price for natural gas. Since the beginning of the year, the price for natural gas has quadrupled. And one reason for this is a certain amount of rebound after, a low during the pandemic, but also there have been delivery problems from countries like Russia and Egypt. What's more, coal is not not an option anymore. In the past, you know, when electricity makers didn't get enough natural gas to work with, they switched to coal. But this too has become very expensive, because if you operate with coal here in Europe, you need to buy carbon emissions certificates, which of course make the price of coal high as well. Last but not least, a very important factor, there simply hasn't been enough wind this year here in Europe. Germany, for example, produces about 20% of its electricity with wind energy coming from wind farms. But the fact that we didn't have enough wind operative this year here in Europe this year means that, you know, the wind energy alternative was not a great one. And that, of course, also had an impact on the price.
Yeah, well, a lot of things there. Thank you so much, Conrad, and enjoy the rest of your day. So the issue with the hike in gas price hike is not just in France or in Europe. Juliana would attest to that in a couple of seconds. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Innie.
Yeah, so the surge in gas prices has forced two major fertilizer producers to halt operations at two UK plants. And we're just talking about that with Conrad in France and the efforts by the government to try and buffer some of the effects of this hike in gas prices.
Yeah, so, you know, Conrad spelled it out pretty clearly there. The price of natural gas has quadrupled since the start of the year, and reserves across Europe are depleting, which is why we are seeing a hike in electricity prices. Again, this is about lots of different issues. One is the depleting amount that we're getting from Russia. Of course, now that lockdowns have been lifted across the world, there is more demand for it, and we're seeing that in the Asia region. And also, it was a very, very cold, bitter winter this time last year in Europe, and we're heading to that season yet again, autumn, winter. These are the key times that people heat their homes, and there isn't enough natural gas around, which is why we have had this story from the New York listed CF Industries, which has announced that they will stop production at two fertilizer plants in the north of England. I believe they put out about 1 billion tons of fertilizer every year from these plants. And of course, if you are using lots of energy and you're an energy intensive industry, you are going to be concerned, because of course it's going to cost you a lot of money, which is why they've closed these plants. A bit of a big story here in the UK. We've already heard from union bosses. They're asking for this to be an urgent question to be answered in the House of Commons by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, or even the Prime Minister, because of course you close plants at short notice. There are hundreds of jobs potentially on the line. And of course, even more concerning, I believe we've actually discussed this about a month ago, Innie, what is this going to do to the consumer? Ofgem have already released the benchmark for how much electricity units will be costing individuals. But as I said, it does get bitterly cold in Europe. It is starting to get cold here in the UK, and the fact that electricity prices are going high is going to be a concern for those who can't afford to heat their homes.
Yeah, well, a lot of reactions and impacts coming from that. But let's see what the market, or how the market is reacting to this and other factors at intraday.
Yeah, this is likely to hit much later, perhaps even in New York, as CF Industries is a New York listed company. But again, investor sentiment here in the square mile, we're still focused in America. We've got weekly jobless data, lots of people looking at that. Also retail sales in America. Now, retail has been pretty volatile over the past couple of months. Last night, we got some information from Asia showing that retail sales had declined. Lots of economists are expecting potentially this to be much similar when we hear of what's happening stateside. But closer to home, the FTSE All-Share is actually in positive territory intraday. There's a new trilateral agreement between Australia, the UK and the US, which means if you are a nuclear-focused stock, your stocks are up, which is what's happened today with Rolls-Royce Holdings and the BAE Systems. They're the top risers on the FTSE All-Share at intraday. The FTSE All-Share is up by 0.54%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.51%, and the FTSE 250 is up by 0.57%. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently down against the US dollar by 0.23%, up though against the euro by 0.19%, and down against the Japanese yen by 0.20%.
And we hear that the UK may remove Kenya from the red list. What else have you heard about this?
Yeah, it's right about time now, Innie, where the UK government start updating, chopping and changing the pretty controversial travel list system. I've got to say, although this is nothing has been confirmed until we actually hear from the UK government. But, you know, there are some media reports suggesting that perhaps Nigeria could be added to the red list. I think every 3 weeks, when everybody's mulling about the UK travel list, Nigeria is always will they, won't they? But again, Nigeria's name potentially put forward to add to the rest list, which wouldn't be great, but this is not confirmed whatsoever. As you said, Kenya, South Africa, lots of southern African countries currently on the red list. Potentially they could be taken off again. Nothing has been confirmed. The only thing I think media and Downing Street sources have confirmed is that none of the British travel hotspots, so we're talking about Southern Europe, will be taken off the green or the amber list. So yes, just to remind our viewers as well, if a country is put on a red list, what that means is you can legally travel to that country, but on your way back, you must quarantine in a British hotel. And I believe the costs are about £2,000 per person, and it is for a minimum of 10 days. And there's no way of getting out of that, because as you buy your ticket, you have to pay for that quarantine. So I'm sure everybody will be keeping their eyes peeled, Innie.
Yeah, high cost of travel there. No thanks to COVID. Well, thank you so much, Juliana. Enjoy the rest of your day. So let's move over to Asia now, where stocks were largely lower today, with Chinese stocks leading losses regionally. By the mainland market close on Thursday, the Shanghai Composite dropped 1.34% to 3,607.09, while the Shenzhen Components plunged 1.95% to over 14,000. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index declined 1.46% to close at 24,667.85, with most casino stocks listed in the city seeing a second straight day of sharp losses. Elsewhere, the Nikkei 225 in Japan slipped 0.62% to close at over 30,000 points, while the Topix index fell 0.3% to end the trading day at 2,090. South Korea's Kospi closed 0.74% lower at 3,130.09, and in Australia, the S&P/ASX 200 advanced 0.58% on the day to 7,460. CSI's Broadex Index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan slipped 0.7%. Well, let's go to Kenya now, where the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority has increased the cost of gasoline to the highest in a decade after authorities decided not to tap a fund meant to keep prices stable and as the local currency weakened. Well, if this was in Nigeria at this time, I know we're talking about a lot of labor union strikes and stuff like that. But let's get how Kenyans are reacting to this. We have joining us from the capital, Nairobi, Mercy Maloney, a business reporter, joining us to give us updates. Hello, Mercy. Good to speak with you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. As you rightly put it, if it was in Nigeria, it would be chaos. But actually, that's more or less the same situation here in Kenya. Just a few minutes ago, the players in the public transport actually issued a notice stating that they were going on strike. Luckily, they did not go on strike in the morning, but as a few minutes ago, some major highways were closed by market players in the public transport sector, stating that they need action from the government to explain why the high prices, and of course, to see if there's something that can be done to reduce the prices. What happened actually is that consumers have been enjoying enjoying a subsidy from the state that was put in place to cushion Kenyans against the hard economic times that were brought about by the COVID-19. So you find that users of petrol were enjoying a subsidy of 7 Kenyan shillings. Users of diesel were enjoying a subsidy of 9 shillings and 90 cents. And users of kerosene were enjoying a subsidy of 11 shillings and 36 cents. Now, that's quite a huge margin. And of course, from this morning, now they woke up to fuel pump prices being 7 shillings more for petrol, diesel being 12 shillings more, and kerosene being 110 shillings more. Now, we have seen from manufacturers and also not only the public transport sector, but also manufacturers and also people in the food industry raising concerns because the traditional thing that happens in Kenya is that a slight increase in fuel prices, of course, that will mean today people won't pay the same transport fare or fee that they paid when they're coming home. We will see the chaos in the evening. You find that by tomorrow morning, probably the tomatoes or every other agricultural produce that is coming from a country will be a bit slightly higher. And of course, in the next few coming weeks, you find that manufacturers will also be passing on the extra cost to consumers. And today, one of the organizations called Root to Food, I saw they also raised concerns because most of these things, a slight increase in fuel prices means that, of course, especially food will be quite expensive, considering that Kenyans are barely holding it on, and considering with what has been happening with COVID-19, people don't have the capacity to spend a lot. So you find that expenditure is a bit low, budgets are really tight, but now we have to deal with an increase in fuel prices. As of yesterday, yes.
No, go ahead. As of yesterday.
Yes, as of yesterday, the Kenyan Senate called upon for the presence of EPRA, the regulatory authority, and the Cabinet Secretary for Petroleum to sit down and ask questions, what is happening, why the increase of fuel pump prices, why now? And of course, it's quite a volatile time in Kenya because we're heading to elections. So there's a bit of politics, but at the same time, there's a bit of concern.
Mercy, I have to tell you, the scenario is so similar because even back here in Nigeria, we are talking about how to do away with subsidy. And each time that conversation comes, then there's the threat of labor strike. And yet economists and analysts are telling us what we are losing by paying billions and trillions of naira as subsidy every month. So we'll see how the situation goes. We'll see if the government can stick to their guns and keep the subsidy away for the sake of infrastructural development. Thank you so much, Mercy Miller, business reporter in Nairobi, Kenya, for bringing us up to date on that. Well, Nigeria is the world's second largest producer of tubers and roots with an output of 115 million tons. Within Nigeria, the yam staple, even though seasonal, is consumed all year round. Recently, the price of a tuber of yam declined 33% to 800 naira recently from 1,200. Favor Oguniroye from Financial Derivatives is here to explain the drivers and the impact. Good to see you, Favor. Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess the fact that this is a harvest season explains the decrease in price, or are there other drivers?
Is the decline in the price is really just due to the increased supply as a result of the harvest season, just like you said, and because this year we experienced rainfall, which is good, and that led to increased output, which then made yam more affordable. And this is a good thing, considering that consumers are facing a decline in their disposable income, and so they can now afford, they can now purchase yams at a more affordable price, even though this price in yam is still higher than pre-pandemic level, but then it's more affordable compared to 3 months ago. And it's even possible that we could see a shift in consumption patterns where consumers might be encouraged to shift and replace yam with replace other food items with yam, like maybe maybe pasta, because the price of pasta has been increasing. So it's a really good thing for consumers right now.
Yeah, very good thing. At least for once, let's have a decrease instead of increase, in price. But
Yeah.
in spite of this leadership position of yam production, Nigeria is still unable, unwilling, I don't know, to export yams in commercial quantity. What are the constraints? Why are we not exporting, especially processed yam?
For Nigeria is the largest producer of yam globally. They account for about 70% of global yam production. And then we see that even Ghana accounts for about 10%. But the interesting thing is that Ghana accounts for about 94% of this yam that is being exported from West Africa. And the reason why Nigeria cannot meet up is really just due to the inefficiencies in the value chain. So one, we see that these farmers still practice outdated and poor agricultural methods, and that would definitely affect the quality of the yams that are produced. We see that these farmers also don't even have access to quality seeds or farming input. So all of this contributes to that. But then yam is perishable in nature, and we see that there are processes and transport issues in place, where it will take days for you to transport yam from the farm to the port, or even to get refrigerated containers to preserve them. So all of this limits the exportation or even the processing of yams. So for Nigeria to be able to export yams, there needs to be a streamlined process in place.
All right, and then we can also talk about the issue of preservation. You talked about the weakness in the value chain. What about the area of preservation? Because it's a seasonal crop, it's not all year round.
Good storage facilities are necessary because of the high moisture content. And what I can say is that the federal government, as we've seen that they provided some of these facilities, and even a lot of entrepreneurs and people have seen that opportunity there to provide these facilities, these refrigerated containers. But then some of them are not accessible to these low-income farmers. So there are limitations there as well.
All right, well, we do hope attention will be given, because it's not just about being the world's second largest producer, but it's about what we do with it. And we hope that we get through to that soon. Thank you so much, Favor, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
So moving on now, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund, as the IMF, has approved the disbursement of special drawing rights of about $67.38 million, which is 30% of quota to Equatorial Guinea under the Rapid Financing Instrument. The disbursements will help meet the urgent fiscal and balance of payment needs stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic and March bat explosions, and catalyze additional external resources, as well as bolster the regional reserves of the Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic and the bat explosions have afflicted heavy damage on Equatorial Guinea's economy and have increased external financing needs and the balance of payments by an additional projected $625 million. That's 5% of the GDP in 2021 and 2022. Well, updates from Zimbabwe now. Days after its power cut began, Zimbabwe asked Mozambique and Zambia to supply it with more electricity as it tries to fill a power shortfall that's led to outages of 12 hours a day. We talked about this a couple of days ago. The current electricity cuts were because of rehabilitation work at Kariba South Hydropower Plant, constraints at its coal-fired Home plant, and limited power import. A total of 1,276 megawatts was being produced by plants in the country on Thursday. And in Liberia, the Central Bank of Liberia has unveiled a chatbot that empowers consumers to instantly file complaints against their financial institutions and insurance providers for misconduct and poor services. After complaints are lodged with the CBL chatbots, the concerned banks or insurance companies have 5 days to respond to the consumer, while the CBL monitors the progress and quality of the response. The technology helps guarantee consumer protection and is under deployment with additional African financial regulators in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Rwanda, and Zambia, following its original deployment with the Central Bank of the Philippines. The technology will be key in addressing the poor service that consumers can face with financial service providers, especially as the sector continues to grow with many new service providers that have short track records and underdeveloped consumer engagement. This deployment also comes at a time when the CBL is driving a major increase in financial inclusion from 18.8% in 2011 to 50% in 2024, expecting more first-time financial consumers in need of protection than ever. Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Ini John Mekwa.